Good morning. Today's class we are going to see about the directive principles of state policy and our fundamental duties. Okay. What is directive principles of state policy? Directive principles of state policies are the guidelines or principles given to the center or state government of India to be kept in mind while framing laws or policies. A state government and central government, while they are framing laws and policies, they have to keep these directive principles of state policy, because directive principles of state policies are the guidelines or principles which is given to the center or state government. This directive principles of state policy was drawn on the model of the Constitution of Ireland. Okay, a directive principles of state policy was drawn on the model of the Constitution of Ireland. Okay, so in the previous class we discussed about the fundamental rights. The fundamental rights was drawn from the model of which country? USA. Okay, this directive principles of state policy are enumerated in part 4 of the Constitution from Article 36 to 51. Okay, so this in short form we can say that TPSP, Directive Principles of State Policy, hereafter I will say that as a DPSP only. DPSP are enumerated in which part of our Constitution? The part 4 of the Constitution, from the article 36 to 51. The article 36 to 51, it describes about the TPSP. Now these are all the points you have to keep it in your mind. Part 2 of the Constitution, it describes about the citizenship. Part 3 of the Constitution, it describes about the fundamental rights. Part 4 of the Constitution, it describes about the directive principles of state policy. Part 4A of the Constitution, it describes about the fundamental duties. On the basis of their content and direction, directive state principles can be classified into 3. They are socialistic directives, Gandhian directives, and liberal and intellectual directives. What is socialist directives? The socialistic directives secure the welfare of the people, securing the welfare of the people, and also it gives equal importance to all people by equal distribution of wealth, and it describes about equal pay for equal work. So through this socialistic directives we can say that it is giving welfare of the people, it is taking care of the people. And the second division or a category of this directive principle of state policy is Gandhian directives. It is giving guidelines for organizing village panchayats, and it is providing decent standard of living in the rural area, and it promotes cottage industries, and it provides free and compulsory education to all children who below the age of 16. These are all the directives, principles through this Gandhian. Okay, what are all the Gandhian directives, principles? What are all the principles of Gandhian directives? One is, it is giving guidelines for organizing village panchayats, and it is providing decent standard of living, and it promotes cottage industries. What does it mean by cottage industries? Cottage industry, the small scale industries, it comes under that. In the rural area, the people, most of the village people, they survived through these cottage industries. So this Gandhian directives, it is promoting the cottage industries, and it provides free and compulsory education for the people who are below the age of 16. The next principle, liberal and intellectual directives. There are guidelines for uniform code throughout the country. We are following this liberal and intellectual directives. It's providing uniform guidelines or uniform code throughout the country, and the legislature to follow in issuing orders or making laws. So when the legislatures are making laws, they have to follow the uniform code. Okay, uniformity. When they are issuing orders without any disparities, every the law it will consider all people. And but you know one thing, but these principles are not enforceable by the courts. This is the notable point. These principles, the state principles, are not enforceable by the courts, but the fundamental rights, everything, it will be enforceable by the constitution, enforceable by the court. But these state principles are not enforceable by the courts.
Now we are going to see the characteristics of directive principles of state policy, or the aims of the directive principles of state policy. What was the first aim? It aimed to create social and economic conditions under which the citizens can lead a good life. Okay, what was the first aim of the directive principles of state policy? To create social and economic conditions under which the citizens can lead a good life. Every citizen of a country has to lead a very good life. Okay, under which social condition also, social and economic conditions, both they have to lead a very good life. In both field they have to lead a very good life. That is the first aim of this directive principles of state policy. And the second one is, they also aim to establish social and economic democracy through a welfare state. Okay, so what is they aim to establish social and economic democracy. So the people without any disparities, without any discrimination in the field of social and economic, they have to lead a very good welfare life. That is the second main aim of the directive principles of state policy. Third one, yardstick in the hands of the people to measure the performance of the government. What is yardstick? It is a measuring stick. It's a measuring stick. So the full power which was in the hand of the measuring power which was in the hand of the people, and they will check the performance of the government through this directive principles of state policy. These are all the aims of the directive principles of state policy, so that only our drafting committee chairman Dr. B.R. Ambedkar described this as novel feature of this Indian Constitution. Why he has? Because all these directive principles of state policy, it takes care of the welfare of the people. So that only our drafting committee chairperson Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, he described this directive principles of state policy as novel feature of Indian Constitution. Now we are going to see the differences between the fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy. What was the first difference? This fundamental rights was derived from the Constitution of USA. Directive principles of state policy is derived from the Ireland. Okay, what was the first difference? The fundamental rights was derived from the Constitution of USA. The directive principles of state policy are derived from the Constitution of Ireland. The second one, even the government cannot take away or abridge these rights. Okay, even the government cannot take away or abridge these fundamental rights. What does it mean by abridge? Abridge, shorten these rights. Okay, this is the second point. And here, these are mere instruction to the governments. Automatically, this instruction which was given to the directive principles of state policy are giving guidelines or instruction to the government. The government in the sense central government and the state government. That is the second difference. Third one, these are enforceable by the court of law. Okay, the fundamental rights are enforceable by the court of law. But these directive principles of state policies are not enforceable by any court. So in the last point also, last class also I have given that. because directive principles, they are doing everything for the welfare of the people. No court will enforce or interfere in the principles of the state policy. But here each and everything will be enforced in the constitution. Okay. What was the third difference between the fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy? The fundamental rights are enforceable by the court of law, but directive principles of state policies are not enforceable by any court. And these fundamental rights have legal sanctions, okay, because everything it is mentioned in the constitution. But these directive principles have moral and political sanctions, okay. And the next one is, these rights strengthen the political democracy in the country, okay. These fundamental rights strengthen the political democracy in the country, but these directive principles of state policies implement or ensures the social and economic democracy. Okay, this directive principles of state policy ensures social and economic democracy, and these fundamental rights are natural rights, but these directive principles of state policies are led to protect human rights. It's protect the human rights. These are all the differences between fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy. This is the expected 5-mark question for the public examination. So, you have to memorize all these points. Okay? Okay, children? Okay. Now, we are going to see the fundamental duties. Fundamental duties in the Indian Constitution are inspired by the Constitution of former USSR. The Congress Party set up the Sardar Swaran Singh Committee in the year 1976 to make recommendations on fundamental duties. The 42nd Amendment Act of 1976 added some responsibilities of citizens to our Constitution called the fundamental duties. This amendment added a new part, namely Part 4A to the Constitution. This new part consists of only one article, that is Article 51A, which for the first time specified a code of 10 fundamental duties of the citizens. Now, we are going to see the list of the fundamental duties. The first and foremost fundamental duty of every citizen is to abide by the Constitution and respect its ideals and institutions, the national flag and the national anthem. The second duty of every citizen is to cherish and follow the noble ideals which inspired the national struggle for freedom. The third duty is to uphold and protect the sovereignty, unity and integrity of India. The fourth important duty of every citizen is to defend the country and render national service when called upon to do so. The next duty is to promote harmony and the spirit of common brotherhood among all people of India, transcending religious, linguistic and regional or sectional diversities, and to renounce practices of derogatory to the dignity of women. And the next duty is to value and preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture. And the next important duty of every citizen is to protect and improve the natural environment, including forest, lakes, rivers and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. The next important fundamental duty of every citizen is to develop scientific temper, humanism and the spirit of inquiry and reform. And the next one is to safeguard public property and to abjure violence. What is the meaning of the word abjure? To renounce. So each and every citizens, they have to give up or renounce their violence and they have to safeguard the public property. And the next important fundamental duty of every citizen is to strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity so that the nation constantly rises to higher levels of endeavor and achievement. And the next important duty is to provide opportunity for education to his child between the age of 6 and 14 years. Already, the 86 Constitutional Amendment Act of 2002 has also introduced the 11th fundamental duty under 51A, under which all citizens of India or parents shall provide opportunities for education to their children between the age of 6 and 14 years. Okay, my dear children, these are all the fundamental duties of each and every citizens of India. So, this is my humble request. We have to follow the fundamental duties and we have to work for the upliftment of our nation. Thank you. Have a nice day, children.